Hello, Spirit Drivers and community. We are so excited to be back. Happy New Year. Happy 2021. Thank you for being here, Greg and Neil. We're so excited to be here. And Neil, where are you calling in from?
I am calling in from Amsterdam. Specifically, I'm very fortunate. I live on a houseboat in Amsterdam. So yeah, I'm right heart and center of the city right now. So yeah.
One of the cooler places that you could be in the world, I think. And I, of course, am in Zurich, and Greg is in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So it's really cool to be able to convene here and join our communities together. Spirit Drivers, of course, is a mastermind for managers and leaders who are in transition and figuring out their next step and navigating this uncertainty that we're navigating right now. And what Neil is going to bring us today is techniques, strategies, and ways of being to be with remote teams, to bring out the best in people as we're all working remotely here. And he is an incredible expert at this. He's bringing over 20 years of experience with global companies, having done this for many years before the pandemic. And he's going to bring his expertise to us today. And Greg.
We're so grateful to have you, Neil. Thank you very much for today.
Well, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Elise. That's quite a lot of pressure you put on me already. And I do have one point about uncertainty, which hopefully I'll cover off a bit later on. So thank you. It's great to be here.
Sure. And what we're going to do today is Neil is going to share. So I'll introduce him. Neil, I'm going to read your full bio to put even more pressure on you to see if you can live up to his bio.
Okay.
And then Neil's going to share 3 strategies, 3 tips that you can apply if you are leading a remote team or if you're on a remote team to bring out the best in yourself, bring out the best in your team members, and for you to really do your best work, especially right now as we're under a lot of stress and pressure and uncertain circumstances. And in between tips 2 and tips 3, he's going to share a gift and a surprise with you. So make sure to stay tuned till the end of the interview to get all 3 tips and also to get the surprise. So without further ado, Neil Schambra Stevens is a business coach and strategist focusing on well-being and productivity in the workplace. As I said, he draws over 20 years of experience as a CMO or VP with Fortune 500 brands and corporations, including really cool ones like Converse, Vans, Levi's, and Polaroid. This experience has highlighted the importance of putting people first and encouraging them to be their best selves, both individually and collectively as a team. So he's originally from the UK, but his career path has enabled him to collect life and work experiences all the way along Europe, Asia, and the US, actually in North Carolina, where I'm originally from, which is just so amazing.
It's a very spooky coincidence, yeah.
Yes. Neil believes in simplicity and encourages the principle of working from anywhere. And he currently lives and runs Mercury Jam, which is his agency, from a houseboat in Amsterdam. So officially welcome, Neil.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. I think maybe just to build a little bit on just the experiences that I've had. Yes, I've been really lucky to work in Europe and in Asia, particularly China and Japan, and also the US. And as you say, it's quite spooky that I spent time in Raleigh, where you're originally from. But I think the one thing that sort of links all that together is people. And I think that I'm really interested in how you work with a team and how you get the best out of the team and how you create great teams. And in particular, how you kind of work remotely as well. I think for one example, when I was in the US, I was fortunate enough to run global advertising for Lenovo from the East Coast of the US, and I had teams in Singapore, in Bangalore, Beijing, and agencies in London, New York, Chicago, and Boston.
All at the same time.
All at the same time. So that was my team.
I'm surprised we can even name that many places.
Well, that's kind of the point, and it's kind of the point of on our conversation today, that it was done remotely. I mean, I had 26 direct reports in Bangalore that I never actually met in person. So and then around the beginning of the lockdown last year, I had this sort of aha moment in that, as people were talking about working from home or working remotely, I had this sense of, well, I've kind of done this before, and admittedly, it's not easy working across so many time zones and geographies, but it is possible. And what I wanted to do was really, with Mercury Jam, was to find a way to really kind of give back to people and share some sort of tips and tricks that from the experiences that I've had. And maybe it's just a bit of a setup, if I may, for our conversation. I think there's really sort of three main themes about working remotely that I would like to highlight before we go into the tips. And I think the first one is that people really need to feel that they're seen and that they're heard and that they're valued. And I'll come back to that later on through the conversation, hopefully. And then the second thing is that you really need to create a sort of a calm, safe environment for people right now. As a leader, you need to, amidst all the craziness and amidst all the Zoom calls, you need to create a space for people so that they can actually feel calm, feel secure, and have that safe environment. And, there's this perception that in order for, companies need to take risks the whole time and try new things. People will only take risks if they feel safe, if they feel like you as a leader or within your team, that they have that safety net. And, I always say that nobody ever had a good idea whilst being chased by a tiger. It just doesn't work. You need to be in a calm, safe mindset to think really clearly. And when you do that, when people do feel safe, you're really inspiring trust, which is something I know we want to focus on today. And people are much more productive when they feel safe. So then you're building in trust, you're building in loyalty, and then it gradually, pans out to creating, more effective teams. And then I think the third point is that people are really kind of hurting right now in terms of being seen and being heard, but also I think there's a really important essence about being you. I mean, we've just come back from a break, and already I don't know how many Zoom calls you've been on, Greg, or you've been on, Elise. There's this sense of dread of like, oh my gosh, here we go again. We're back into this. And people need to be able to express themselves. They need to be able to talk about how they're really feeling right now, and not necessarily in sort of a touchy-feely kind of kumbaya kind of way, but they need to be able to express themselves with a clear, authentic voice. And as leaders, we need to hear people, and we need to do that in a really kind of calm and controlled manner, so that people do feel that they have a voice, that they do have a say, when we're all just sitting here on these little screens. Sometimes people show up for a Zoom and they sit there for half an hour, maybe don't say anything, and then that's it. There's no engagement there. You don't know how that person's doing. Are they hurting? Are they okay? Are they just showing up? You don't know. Unless you actually really engage with people, you're never going to get the best out of them. So I think that's sort of the setup, those 3 points that hopefully we will cover with some of the tips that I want to share with you and the Spirit Drivers today.
Wow, so insightful and relevant. And I would just want to summarize, people need to be seen and heard. People need to feel safe, and they can't actually take risks unless they feel safe, which is the paradox. And we need to be sensitive of people coming back to work and transitioning back into this remote environment right now, and make sure that we're interacting in an authentic way right now, and allowing people to share what's really authentically going on for them. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think just to add, the final triplet on the first point is that it's about being seen and heard, and really importantly, it's about being valued.
Yeah.
Being valued.
People need to feel that they are giving right now. And when there are so many, when our lives are so complicated, whether we have homeschooling issues, if you have children of that age, or just health issues, you need to make sure that when you're showing up and you're giving to your company or to your team or your brand, that is reciprocated in some way, that you are feeling valued back. And I think that's a really, really important thing, because otherwise people are a bit like, why am I doing this? And there's a lot of commentary about, physical well-being and as well as mental well-being right now. And I think it's everybody's responsibility, including you as a leader. You can only be a good leader if you're taking care of yourself as well. And so self-care isn't just for your team, it's for everybody. So I think the summary that you gave is pretty spot on. Yeah.
Great. Well, one thing I want to highlight for people who are watching is your presence, Neil, here, because when you started talking, I immediately started to take deeper breaths. You speak in a way that invites others. You take your time as a leader. And that's something that when I first met you, I was taken by, because you made me feel important just by the amount of time that we took together to just get to know each other. And it wasn't, and I saw your profile as this big fancy leader of all these big fancy companies. And then you're so approachable and you really see people, and it comes through even just on camera now. And I want to just highlight that, because this is something that's a way of being that leaders can emulate. Well,
thank you. That's a very, very kind compliment. I'm quite humbled by that. I think that I need to gather my thoughts. I mean, you've thrown me a bit there.
Well done, at least.
Well, yes, but I'm back. I'll be back. No, I think yes, as a leader, I think, and sure, I've been really lucky to work for some amazing brands and huge brands. One of the brands I was working for was $45 billion. A huge, huge brand. But it's about people. Yes, it's great if you work for a brand that has a perception or an image like a Converse or a Vans, but it's absolutely the people. And I think that I used to kind of joke, and it's kind of something that I like to do when I worked at Vans, for example. I knew I had about 40 people in my team, and I knew the order that everybody would come into work and where they came from and what their journey was. And so, let's see if I can remember. So Daniel always came in first. Then there was Nelson, and then somebody else, then somebody. And I knew that one of them came by car, one of them came by train, one of them came by bike, because they. And I think being vested in your team, regardless of what level they were, they all work for one another. They all work for you. And as a leader, you are in service to them. Yes, you have to be the decision maker, or quote unquote the boss, but you're there to serve them. You're there to make sure that those people show up and have the support and are nurtured to be their best on any given day. And that's really, fancy title aside, as you say, that's all really what you're doing as a leader. And then you get the best from people, and then you create that calm environment, and then you can support, and then people feel seen and heard. And I think, especially now, where I'll share another tip for free, but that's not my free tip. So anyway, when you're in a meeting, and particularly with junior members, and I've said this specifically to a lot of female co-workers, make sure you have one thing to say in a meeting. And make sure everybody's listening. The last person that speaks, repeat back what they say, and then make your point and be heard. And then you get that acknowledgement. And I think that's really, really important, to make sure that you're giving people the confidence to give them a voice. that they can actually share the knowledge and the skills and the talent that they have. And I think drawing that out of people is I like doing that. I think it's a challenge, and I think that making people feel comfortable and safe is the first thing that I try and do to working with the people.
It's awesome. And Greg, this is something that I think you're a master at as well. Greg, and by the way, Greg and I have a almost completely remote relationship. We met virtually, we met each other in person over the holiday for the first time, but we've been working together remotely for months. And Greg, you're just such a servant leader yourself, and very good at seeing people and bringing out the best in people too. So I know you have a lot to offer here as well.
Well, thank you very much, Elise. First of all, it was an unbelievable pleasure to meet Elise in person, because as good as you think she is virtually,
oh gosh,
it's not just exponential, right? It's unbelievable that she is the phenomenal human being that we have all grown to respect and adore. The advice that she offers. I read a little. Yes, ma'am. And I'll charge you extra for that later. Don't worry. I read a little book. I met a man by the name of Mark Miller. He was at a church meeting that I went to when I was in Menlo Park, California. We used to have these large monthly guest speaker meetings, and Mark Miller had a new book out called The Secret of Great Leaders. And so I went to this thing for my expensive breakfast and networking, and who's this Mark Miller guy? As it turns out, Mark Miller was the head of human resources for Chick-fil-A, and I believe he is still in that role today. And he starts talking about this little book, which honestly, it's still one of those little thin things that looks like a gift book. And it's all pretty and it's well designed, and you could pass it over in a heartbeat, right? Then he starts talking about the serve method. And the serve method, by the time breakfast was over, I was absolutely enthralled with this method, because it struck me as the way that servant leaders and all leaders need to work. And I've used it as a barometer ever since, in gauging leadership quality, as well as gauging leadership qualities that need to be improved. And the serve method is quite simple. It's that leaders need to be able to see the future, engage and develop others, reinvent continuously, know the difference between, and I want to say this correctly, it's know the difference between performance and people, right? So know how to encourage performance, as well as know how to encourage people, and walk the talk, embody the values. So that's the SERVE method. And I'll tell you, I have never heard anything that was so important, and it became my way, right? That's the way I work with people, and the way I have a barometer for coaching people as well. Certainly has been important to me in the development of leaders for early stage companies, because while it seems romantic to do, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Full of disappointment and frustration and so on. But you'd better be able to lead people with a vision of the future, or otherwise it will just crash. And I've seen it happen enough times to be able to put that warning out there. So that's my little pitch to Elise's compliment. And I've been at this for 20 years.
Yeah, it's amazing too. And what I'm hearing from that is all of the elements of good leadership, good servant leadership, also apply remotely. So that's one of the things I'm hearing. And Neil,
it's true people skill.
Yeah. So why don't we get into your tips, Neil, as we've set the stage,
Sure.
We've set the context, and we've talked a lot about leadership. So bring us back to remote teams, and what can we apply to bringing out the best in people leading remote teams?
Absolutely. And I think, Greg, in one of the whether it was the third or the fourth point there was about people and performance. And I think they really go hand in hand. And I think that as much as, you know, we had a massive shock with the pandemic, and it was, you know, it was a major health issue. It affected us personally, within our companies, freedom of movement, et cetera, and people sort of lost sight of kind of not exactly who they were, but maybe exactly like who they were working for. And I think my first tip for remote leaders is to ask yourself the question: have you gone back and looked at or started again with your company values, your brand values, to make sure that people know the company that they're working for? And we talk about authenticity in the workplace, and I think that's a really, really important thing. It's up, as marketeers, you know, we all have these horrible buzzwords that we say all the time: authenticity, vulnerability. But this one really sticks, and it's really, really important, because if people don't know how to act and how to behave within the confines of a company or a brand, then they're kind of a little bit lost, right? So yes, and I also say that there is a kind of a way of working that you have within a company, or a certain expectation that people want you to kind of draw with it or keep within the lines. And what I also say is that, yeah, you can stay within the lines, but you can use your own crayons. You can express yourself within that. And I think that's really important for people to create that environment and know the brand that they're working for. So I think there's some great examples of brands that did this really, really well, which is going back to their brand values when we all moved to working remotely, and just reminding people what their values were when we were all offline in the real world, and how you would bring those values back online. So, for example, if some of your values was about innovation, how do you use innovation? How did you use innovation offline, and how are you bringing that in online? And I think if you do that, then it gives people a sense of continuity from where they were and bringing them along, and it gives them a sense of belonging and kind of integrity. And I think that you can engage people with that. You can bring them into that conversation by workshopping it online, because it has to be online, right? So as part of a Zoom call, I'm going to invite you, Elise, and I'm going to invite you, Greg, to talk about the values of the brand that we work for. How did it resonate for you before, and how can it resonate with you now? And I think if you have a really clear culture and a really strong brand DNA, then you can rebuild around that sort of sense of purpose, and rebuild around the sense of community around, maybe it's 3, 4, 5 maxims that you have. And so people, and again, it's a really good exercise for people to understand, well, what are the important things as a brand? What do we stand for now as a brand? And I think there's some great examples out there. I think there's the brand or the company Gravity is not that I'm giving a plug, is a great example of their CEO, who if you recall, this is the company that wanted to give everyone the same, not minimum wage, but pay everybody the same. So a few years ago, they went to sort of 70,000. Everybody went to a standardized pay of $70,000 a year. In order to do that, the CEO took a paycheck, or a pay cut rather, of like $1 million or something like that. So he's always engaged with his people. So when it came to lockdown and making some hard economic choices for the company, what did he do? He and the CFO, they went round and had a series of town hall meetings, cafe meetings, however you want to describe it, and took input from every employee, pretty much every employee. And 3 choices: we go bankrupt, we lose 20% of our workforce, making the number up, or everybody takes a reduction in salary. What should we do? what should we, and this is great servant leadership, it's kind of in reverse, what should I do as a leader to help you there? And unilaterally, everybody just said, well, we'll take a reduction in salary, and some more than others because they had, maybe more ability to pay. But I think just maintaining your values as a brand, offline and online, is a really good way of galvanizing people, and it helps people really focus in terms of what's the company that I work for, what are the values, what are my values, how am I meant to show up on a daily basis. And yeah, I think as an exercise, I'd highly recommend or invite remote leaders to try that if they haven't already. And if they have, maybe it's the new year, you can kind of refresh things and think, are the choices that we made whenever it was, March or April or in the summer, are they still relevant? Sadly, have we gone through a reorg and sadly lost some co-workers? Maybe there's a time to kind of rally the troops again, bring everybody back together around some kind of core values. So yeah, that would be my first strategy or tip to share with you guys today.
Wow, that's powerful and such an amazing example. I hadn't heard that story, and it for me, it was a perfect example of one of the tenets that you talked about, Greg, which was walking the walk. And how do you help people walk the walk? Neil, I also come from a background in branding, as you know, and there are these buzzwords. Even a word like you said, authenticity or trust or innovation can become such a dead word that means nothing. But when you have these conversations, in any word that's a value, it means something a little bit different to each person. It's going to mean something different to you, and it's going to mean something different in the context of the company or in the context of your personal life. And so having that conversation with your team around, hey, what does this mean to you? The value of trust or the value of innovation. What does it mean to you in your life? What does it mean to you in the company? What does it mean for how you show up to this meeting? And gathering, just starting that conversation, having people be thinking about that and be owning that value for themselves and not just reading it or having it be a dead word that means nothing to them. That's an incredibly powerful way to get people clear and unite everyone around the same tenets.
And maybe if I could just build on that, I think that I've been fortunate. I've worked in advertising, I've worked in agencies, I've worked in house, I've worked on the client side. And I think, we have these beautiful manifestos. There's something beautiful which is printed up on the wall as you go into reception. And if when the chips are down, that's when those statements actually mean something. And again, another example, there was a brilliant example here in the Netherlands, where one of the company values is that they invest a huge amount of time getting the right team and the right people. And if after a period of time they have to let them go, they say that they will set up a series of interviews for that person in their network and offer them the opportunity, because there's kind of everybody comes together on this one. Like, we meet, the candidates are met all the way up to the CEO, and the CEO personally hires every single person. And it's quite a substantial company. It's not, 10 people in the Mickey Mouse agency or whatever. And sadly, they had to let people go. And this guy is very humble. And again, he doesn't really post on LinkedIn. He's like, but I want to use this opportunity to kind of blow my trumpet a little bit. And they sadly had to let one of their, I think it was a developer or something like that, go. And they set this developer up with 8 interviews with a number of different companies. And within a week, he had a job. Now, you could be cynical and say, well, that's kind of good PR for you or whatever. But it's, in my mind, it's really walking the talk, as you say. And I think companies really need to have no, it sounds too harsh to have a good hard look at themselves, but really think about the values that are important and how do you live those values. And maybe once we come out of this, and we will come out of this, maybe don't put that as one of your brand values, because it doesn't mean anything anymore. Instead of having a long laundry list because it looks good, we focus on 3 things and only those 3 things.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe that are the benefits of going through this exercise and coming out the other side. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Tip 1, reunite around your values, understand what they mean to you. What's your second strategy, Neil?
Right. The second one that I would like to share today is energy management versus time management. And I think there's 2 elements to this. The first one is really about scheduling and priority. And the second one is energy and execution. And I have a quick question. A friend and I were talking about, I'm British, but I've lived in America, how, potato, scheduling or scheduling?
The former.
I can't remember what did I say? Scheduling or scheduling?
Scheduling, yes.
So the American pronunciation is scheduling.
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you live in Raleigh, and then it's scheduling.
Scheduling.
Okay. Scheduling.
OG.
All right. So, oh yes, of course, you dropped that at the end. I understand. All right. So, if you're watching, it's scheduling. Okay, we've cleared that one up. Just wanted to put that one out there.
That's a humble Brit right there to even ask. I'm amazed.
Come on, I've got the opportunity. Anyway, it helped me solve a riddle that I was currently having. Anyway, so you mentioned uncertainty at the beginning, Elise, and I want to pose this question for you. As a concept, is the future more uncertain than it was, say, 2 years ago?
Wow, such a good question. Probably not. It isn't.
Yes, it is not. Arguably, it is not. Conceptually, the future is no more uncertain than it's ever been. Now, the circumstances have changed. Yes. But can you, Greg, predict the future? Do you know what's going to happen this evening or tomorrow or next week? No, conceptually you can't. But the uncertainty is the thing that we really kind of need to focus on. And that's why I think as a leader, it's really important that you have that conversation with people and that you really bring them into the present, you bring them into the now, and be really, really super clear on what the focus is from a task point of view. What are the things that we want to really focus on? Because when everything looks daunting, like a day, a week, a year, we're almost, depending on where you are in the world, we're almost coming up to the first anniversary of the pandemic. Can you believe that? We're still here, we're still doing this. So I think it's really important that we really invest time in scheduling and planning. And by that, I mean, say nobody has a typical Monday to Friday, 40-hour work week, but for argument's sake, say we did. And you want to schedule like 1 or 2 hours, whatever it might be, or investing the time to schedule for 1 and 2 hours to make sure that the other 39 or 38 hours of your week are optimal and maximized. And in order to do that, I invite you to do this exercise, which is really literally write down all the things that you have to do. And I'm old school, so I use my little notebook here, and I sit and I write it all down. And it could be, there you go, thanks, Elise. All the things that you need to do. There you go, Greg.
We're all
rules. There you go. You can't beat it. Anyway, write down everything that you've got going on in your life right now, including, I don't know, paying the bills, grocery shopping, whatever it might be, because then you get a true picture of what is going on in your life right now. Because our professional and personal lives are so blurred right now that the traditional way of looking things, the commutes, the lunch break, coffee breaks with your co-workers in a shared space no longer exists. So we have to come at it from a different point of view with a different approach. And I think when you do that, you really then start to prioritize energy versus time. Where am I, though? These are my tasks. This is what I have to do. Knowing where I am on my best day, I'm going to focus on 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and do a chunk of time. And then I have some other responsibilities. Maybe I have children of school age. So from 8 to 10 when they're starting their homeschooling, or 9 to 11, forget it. You're not going to be available for a status meeting, a Zoom call, or whatever. You have other responsibilities in your life. So where is it that you can invest the maximum amount of energy to get the job down versus time? And when you look at it like that and start to break things down into smaller sort of bite-sized pieces, in conjunction with your team, in conjunction with your manager, you get an idea of really prioritizing what it is that you have to do, and giving yourself that time to do it, and giving the energy push to do it. And then that way you'll see what's really important and what's less important, because you have that opportunity to do what you need to do. And I think when you do this in conjunction with your manager or your teammates, co-workers, I think it's an important thing is that this isn't about micromanagement from a leader. I'm saying, Elise, tell me what you have to do this week. And then you go do it. Greg, what does the next couple of weeks look like for you? Okay, and then you go and do it. If there's something that you need to check in with, raise a hand, ask a question, set up a call, sure, you can do that. But it's not being on everybody's case the whole time. And I think it's a different style of leadership, and it's kind of backing off a little bit. It's almost the opposite of micromanaging, because you have to trust people that they're going to do that. And it's very much, I think I used this reference before, and it's one of my favorite references about growing up in the UK. We used to have a wonderful television program called One Man and His Dog, which was about shepherds and sheepdogs. And it was a competition which shows the state of, British entertainment and scheduling, that primetime TV is occupied by a farmer and his sheepdog. But anyway, indulge me on this. So the competition was that there was different farmers working with a dog, and they had to say have a small flock of sheep, 5 sheep, and the sheepdog, he had to drive the sheep possibly through a couple of obstacles, round something into a pen, and then the farmer would close the gate. Now, the learning from that it's really important sometimes that you lead from the rear, that you are cajoling people along, that you're encouraging them left and right, and not, sometimes there's opportunities where you need to lead from the front. But leading from the rear, I think, is a really valuable skill that you can develop as a leader, particularly in these times, to make sure that the job's being done, not by being in front of people and being on top of people, but just really, as I say, encouraging and nurturing and cajoling people. Yes, they're going to go to the left. Yes, they're going to go to the right, but that's okay. You know where you're going to actually navigate them in the end. And I think that's a real gift that I think that you can, to give your team the space and the trust and the support to do that.
I love that. And one of the things that I'm hearing in that is allowing, and this is a trend that I'm seeing in many companies now, is allowing people to manage their own energy, as you said. So my husband works for ABB Hitachi, and they made an announcement saying, we get that you have families, we get that you have lives, and we get that you can't be on or like at the office between 9 and 5 every day. So we are going to give you your priorities, and it's up to you to get them done. We expect you to be available for your team as needed during the working hours, but you choose when you work. And that style of that flexible style, I think, is going to be one of the positive trends after this pandemic. And another thing that I'm hearing in what your tip was, that you started out with, is energy management, listing all of your activities, is listing all of your activities, both personal and professional, and making sure that you also save time for yourself, and making sure that yoga is on your list of priorities, and that going outside for a walk is on your list of priorities. And
great examples. Yeah, Yeah, no, I think, yeah, that's a great ad. And for me, that's kind of a given, it's sort of exercise or whatever. But yeah, I'd reiterate that point. Absolutely, Elise, that how do you start your day? Where do you nurture yourself as a leader? And if it is, walking around for 15 minutes or starting your day with some meditation practice or yoga or running or whatever it is, I think that's a really good build, I would say. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I really
Because it's
love
about energy.
Yeah.
Neil, I really
Sorry.
love the suggestion that you gave to have leaders talk to their staff and their teams about how does your next week look for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a great open-ended question, right? It also gives everybody the chance to sort of use the red velvet rope trick, right? Let's shed the things that we don't need to do, or that somebody else can do, or that we might not have thought through well enough when we assigned it. But that view of, like, how does it look? That's the best open-ended question I've heard in a long time. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. No, I think it's something that it does two things there that really, it shows an interest from the leader. How are you doing? How does your week look like? Versus where are you on this project? And then people invariably, if there's something that they've found relatively easy, they'll talk about that and they'll talk that up and they'll say, okay, what is it that you're not telling me that's I know is kind of on your to-do list that should we? And then there's an opportunity for them to also say, well, how are you doing with that? Do you need a little more? Do you need to talk it through? Sometimes just having a conversation about it to refocus, reprioritize. Not necessarily do you need help, because people are very reluctant to ask for help explicitly. But I think, I like that, Greg, in terms of just having the conversation about it. I think it's really, it's a more empathetic style also.
Yeah.
I think
it really is the question of, do you need help? Carefully crafted and put in a way that's, how does your week look for you? How's it going? Right?
Yeah, it also opens the door really nicely to give them the opportunity to talk about a specific project and how that's going and how work is going. Or how does this week look for you could also mean, well, I'm feeling really stressed.
Yeah, I think also
feelings.
I think talking about feelings, and that, we'll maybe come on to that in the third tip. But I think something that I've seen a lot of, or read a lot of people doing is maybe it's just a British thing. I don't know. How are you? Oh, I'm okay. How are you? I'm fine. Just those throwaways, those comments. And actually, you know your people, your team pretty well. And when at least you might say, oh, I'm fine. And you say, really? Are you fine? Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, let's run this again. Because I'm not fine right now. And open up a little bit and share a little bit. Well, I'm really finding it hard to do X, Y, and Z. And I think that's also leaning into that a little bit, is how you can draw it out from your team by leading, for example, of saying, you know what, I'm having a hard time this week. My week, it's pretty tough. I don't know how I'm going to solve this. Like, be really transparent. I've said it before, we don't have to be the smartest people in the room all the time. We don't have to have the answers all the time. And that level of transparency and openness, I think people appreciate the humility of it. But it's also a kind of a way of actually showing that you're comfortable and confident. You're comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think right now that's a really important conversation to have with people.
Absolutely.
It's also good for leveling, isn't it? Making sure that everybody's on the same page and leveling. Right. It's a nice tip.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Well, Neil, share with us what you want to share with your gift. What is it that you want to share with the audience here? Well,
I had a little think about it, and I think that maybe people maybe they haven't really finalized their New Year's resolution or their intention. We were talking about intention before we started the broadcast, and so my gift or my invitation is that for my coaching for Mercury Jam, I offer a discovery session for people, a complimentary session, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And what I would invite people to do if they're interested in having a conversation about coaching or about any of the things that we've talked about today, to reach out, and I'm sure you'll share the details somehow. And that if we have that conversation and then move forward into some kind of one-on-one coaching, that from now until the end of January, if we have that those conversations, that I will offer, I'll give everyone a 10% discount just to get the year kind of kickstart a little bit, and just see it as an opportunity for people to invest in themselves.
Wow.
That's a great gift.
That's fantastic. So I've put Mercury Jam in the comments so people can click a Mercury Jam and book a session with you. And then you're giving a 10% discount on coaching through the end of January. Is that right?
Yeah. If we have we need to have the discovery session. And it might be that people aren't in the right, to be full transparency, aren't in the right place for coaching. Quite often people are, if they thought about it, and maybe they need just a little encouragement. And then if we then start to work together between now and the end of January, how many days are there in January? 30, 31? I'll offer a 10% discount to encourage people to invest in themselves, because that's what it is, to help them into 2021 and beyond, I would say.
Wow. And how would someone know, Neil, if they might be a good fit for coaching with you?
My flippant answer would be, let's have a conversation.
That's what mine would be.
Yeah, let's talk. I think that there are certain areas that or areas of experience that I have with some of the brands that I've had, and I wouldn't necessarily let geography be an issue. I've got a number of clients in various parts of the US and various parts of Europe. I think in particular, I also do a lot of mentoring as well. And what I'm seeing is I'm really interested in kind of the next generation of leaders. I'm less interested in the people who are kind of, I don't know, at a more senior level, not really interested in the sort of the C-suite. I think that's executive coaching is very well represented. I'm interested in the next generation of coaching. You know, people who are looking at maybe manager, senior manager, director, want to move up to a VP. How do I do this? How do I navigate? What's it like working in the boardroom or working across geographies? Those are the type of people I think that I would like to encourage, because I really want to give back for the experiences that I've had working in, as I say, in different geographies. So.
Fantastic. Well, that's a huge offer. So if you're watching right now and that sounds like you're a manager and you're really looking to up-level your leadership to the next stage in your career, or you just like Neil and you want to talk to him, go.
Might have to filter that a little bit. What are you doing today? I'm like,
Yeah. My statement here is, if you're watching this, do Neil's discovery session, no matter what.
Pretty much it. Yeah.
You might find there's a lot of connection there, and he is highly recommended.
Yeah.
And if not, I mean, I've had, to be transparent, I've had discovery sessions with people, and I've given them some pointers and tips, and say, you know, I'm not either they come to the conclusion that they're not in the position because to commit to it. Because it's a commitment from both parties. You know, you're investing in something. It's a very powerful tool when through effective coaching. It's not something that you just sort of turn on and turn off. It's you're investing in something because it can impact somebody's life without sounding overly dramatic.
Right.
Yeah.
But to kind of bring it down to maybe to Greg's point, let's just have a chat and see. Maybe there's just in that session there's a few pointers and off you go.
Rock on. So Mercury Jam is in comments, click and go book your discovery session with Neil. Get your 10% discount through January on coaching if that's for you. And that's an incredible offer. So thank you, Neil, for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome.
And we also, Greg and I, want to make sure that you know that Spirit Drivers is open for enrollment as well. So that's another resource for you. It's a mastermind community of managers and leaders who are in transition together and dedicated, committing to living their vision, to living your vision through this time, canceling out some of the external noise, coming back to yourself, and also being in support and community with other people during this time and as you're transitioning through your career. Anything
It's really important work that you. It's really important work that you guys do, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, we love it. We're having a lot of fun.
Yeah. Our first cohort had so many wins. It was amazing.
Yeah, and on top of the leadership development, where we study the elements of a healthy human spirit. And it's all about coming back to yourself in the end and being driven by your own spirit and your own vision. That's what we're encouraging. So let's move to your third tip, Neil. What's the last strategy you have for us for leading remote teams through 2020?
I would say the last one is something called a team check-in. And this is something that I've employed both online and offline as well. And it's a great exercise, for example, for a status meeting, maybe a group of people, 4, 5, 6, something like that. And what you're trying to do is to bring people in and connect and bring them into that moment. You know, so say you have a 60-minute status meeting, maybe in Zoom land, it's a little less these days, but you invest time in getting people present and getting people in the right mindset and in the right space. Mm-hmm. And you start by asking 3 questions, and it's the same 3 questions every time. So it's the first one is, how are you doing today? How are you doing today? The second one is, what's something of interest that you've seen, heard, or read that you would want to share with the group? Mm-hmm. And then the third one is, what would keep you from being present right here, right now, in the room or on this screen? And I think just to add some of the rules of engagement. So each person takes it in turn to speak, and the rest listen. So it's as much as a listening exercise as anything else. And there's no comments, there's no add-ons, there's no jokes, there's no stepping in, you know, if someone's struggling or whatever. You listen, and that's how you're engaging, and you allow that person and afford that person the space. And at the end, you just simply say, thank you for sharing, Elise. Thank you for sharing, Greg. And then you move on to the next person until everybody's completed. And once it's completed, you don't then go back in and say, oh, you know, you start gossiping. You have people present. And what it is doing as an exercise, it's enabling people, right? It's giving them an opportunity to speak in their most open and authentic voice that they have. And it's allowing them to express their feelings without judgment. And it takes a little time for people to open up. But I've seen this it's a really powerful tool. And it brings people into the room or onto the screen, in our case. It puts everybody on the same level. You know, you can do it popcorn style. Anybody can go in any order. It doesn't have to be the most senior to the junior. And to that point, it gives all the people, maybe the younger team members, an opportunity to have their voice heard, to express themselves. And by doing that, you really focus your team. You really build trust. And then as a leader, if somebody really is struggling, yeah, you can go up afterwards, after the session, after the meeting, or reach out. But then you've got a real sense check. You've got a temperature read for how the people are doing. And I've had amazing feedback from people. You know, sometimes people saying, I'm not checking in today. And you go, okay, so-and-so's yeah, they're maybe not in a good headspace, or people bouncing in going, I can't wait to share this. This is really something interesting that I saw or read. Or the third one, like the distraction thing, is a really powerful thing. Like, yeah, I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I'm just thinking about, I've got to pay this bill, or I've got to finish that presentation for Elise by the end of the week. And you know what a stickler she is for deadlines and things like that. Just kidding. But by doing that, people then put all those things to one side, and then you have them in the room, in the moment, or for those 30 or 60 minutes that you have people on your screen. And what that means, coming back to my very first point, is it means that people are seen, it means that they are heard, and it means that they are valued. And it is a really, really powerful tool done properly. And again, people need to commit to it. They need to show up authentically and be open as they feel comfortable with. But that would be my third tip: the power of the team check-in.
That's an incredible tip. And one of the things that's coming to my mind right now as you're talking about that is we have a sense that time is so scarce that we don't have time to really get to know each other. I've heard from managers and leaders who've burned out who said, well, I just got my work done and I wasn't there to chat. I wasn't there to talk to anybody. I was just there to deliver. And that was my value. And that sense of having to deliver, having back-to-back meetings, not having enough time to catch up with anybody because you're constantly working, that is a mindset more than it is a reality. Mm-hmm. And one extra benefit that I'm sensing about this team check-in is that it gives you a sense of time for people. Yeah. It gives everyone the space to just be there, to just show up, and not to constantly be rushing from meeting to meeting, not having time to go to the bathroom.
I completely agree with you. And I think there's a certain, mindset's a good word, about sort of delivering your work and being focused. I don't have time to chat. It's not about chatting. It's holding a space for people. And it goes back to one of the earlier points of creating a calm, safe environment. If you start a meeting, there's all the technical problems we have and people are in, they're out, or my mic's not working, just pause. Just keep people space. And if it is a 60-minute meeting and it takes you 15 minutes to check in, I guarantee you'll have a much more productive meeting for those remaining 45 minutes. And you always stick to 60 or whatever it is. You never run over to compensate for it. And that's also something that people really appreciate, because then by maybe having a longer check-in, you sense it as a leader, you get to read your team a little bit. Yeah, we'll let it go a little bit more. And if people are really opening up and all the rest, let that go. Let them breathe. They're sharing. They're feeling open. They're feeling human. They're feeling vulnerable. They're feeling excited. Whatever that emotion is, let it out. Because this is a team of people that work together, or worked together, if they were in the same space or even, different geographies or whatever. They need each other. They need that time to come together. And that human connection right now, when we all are in different places, is critical. And I would really encourage people to try that, because it's a powerful tool to use, for sure.
When I first heard you talk about this tool, Neil, I thought to myself, that's jet fuel for teams. That's really... It really is. I've run large meetings and distributed teams for a great part of my life, and I truly wish I had this tool. I think I used some of the techniques, but I never organized around it. And just taking the first 15 minutes of an hour meeting, or any meeting, just to get everybody moving, right? Talking, communicating, working thinking as a team. It's brilliant strategy, and I again will tell you it's jet fuel for team building.
A great description. Yeah,
it is.
It is. The irony is
that
you're pausing to accelerate. That's
right.
the thing, that you're holding people in a space, connecting them together, And then when you have that union, when you have that connection, the power of what you can do as a team with that, with Greg's jet fuel, as you say, it's amazing. You know, you really do get the best out of people that way.
Right.
Fantastic.
It is a beautiful tool.
And to summarize, Neil, your 3 tips now to finish up the call, because I want to bring us to a close here. Will you summarize them for us?
The tips?
Mm-hmm.
3 tips for sure. Okay, so the first tip is really focusing back on your brand values as a company, as a team, from when you were in offline, and bringing those online. And the second one is really focusing on energy management versus time management. And the third is the power of the team check-in. And I think, to really gonna go back to what I said at the beginning, the 3 things that are important right now is being seen, being heard, being valued, creating a safe space and a calm environment, and encouraging people to be more you, to be themselves and be authentic. That's how I'd like to end and summarize that.
Beautiful. Thank you for summarizing.
And say thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Neil. It's been an incredible hour. So much value, so much incredible. I'm going to continue to apply in my own life and leadership. And I know we're going to continue to collaborate. So I'm excited about that.
Looking forward to that too. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you.
Be great. And at the end of the day, don't forget to sign up for the next Spirit Drivers cohort for the mastermind course, spiritdrivers.com. There's an application form there, and at mercuryjam.com.
Yes.
The discovery session, book Neil's discovery session. You're going to get a lot out of that, even if coaching isn't necessarily where you need to go or what you need to do. I promise you it's worth the time.
Absolutely. So thank you both again.
Thank you very much, Greg.
And we'll see you, Spirit Drivers, next Tuesday for another incredible guest and another incredible video cast.
Thank you again, Neil.
Thank you. Have a great day.